Today, we're joined by Raffaele and Edoardo, co founders of Niko Energy, a clean tech startup aiming to transform how Mexico adopts solar energy and distributed energy resources. Originally from Italy, the duo founded their first company, Cocinas Ocultas, in 2018, a dark kitchen venture they scaled and successfully exited to Travis Kalanick's Cloud Kitchens in 2022. In 2023, they launched Niko Energy with a vision to bring clean energy to the masses through tech-enabled infrastructure and accessible financing. In just over a year, they've begun reshaping the B2B solar market in Mexico, tackling everything from credit barriers to operational inefficiencies and laying the groundwork for what could become Mexico's first at-scale virtual power plant. In this conversation, we dig into how they navigate regulation, build financing rails, and use AI to streamline solar adoption for thousands of customers. We'll also discuss their entrepreneurial philosophy, lessons from market misreads, and much more. Okay, thank you, Raphael, for joining us today and getting into the story behind Niko Energy. If you want to start with the inspiration behind Niko Energy, a little bit about your inception story.
Sure. Thanks for inviting us. Maybe real quick, as a context, myself and Edoardo are actually both Italians. We're friends ever since. We decided to move to Latin America to follow the dream of being entrepreneur. This was 2018, where we initially decided to jump into the dark kitchen business. At the time, no one really knew what it was, but we saw the opportunity, growing sector with the need of like proper kitchens for delivery. And that's how Cocinas Cultas was founded back then. And we were lucky enough to exiting that business to Cloud Kitchen was, is still the number one leader in the sector that was, still led by Travis Kalanick, Uber founder who left Uber and is now focusing on that. Also, like two Italian doing kitchens at the point that no one really knew what they were, and an opportunity to grow globally together. So we spent 3 years there. Initially launched operation across the world. I spent a year also in Korea, came back and lived between Mexico and Brazil. And that's when we decided to set base. After 3 years of living like nomads around the world, we needed a break. And among all we saw Mexico as a huge place with a gigantic opportunity of fast-growing economy and with a ton of things to do. And while setting base here, we had very clear that we wanted to go back at entrepreneurial endeavors. This time, lucky enough to be able to be in a position of taking the time to actually pick the right sector, the right thing to do, etc. And eager of doing something positive for this world, we start looking at cleantech as a whole, right? So actually, Edoardo, my business partner, had done some work in the past, even an internship in the space. And the more we start looking, the more we saw the untapped opportunities up for take. And the more we saw, the more we liked, and that's how Niko was born in June 2023, and here we are. The need is basically was pushing adoption of solar energy, which should be a reality already, but we are still at below 2-3% of penetration in Mexico, and seeing the reality of solar, the economics for Mexico, that definitely makes sense, and seeing little adoption, we couldn't really match it too, and that's where we saw a big problem that needed a big solution, and here we are.
Before we go into Niko and the inception story, which you hinted at, it's a big leap from going from cloud kitchens to energy. And I know you mentioned Eduardo's background. How did you guys land on this? Was there a brainstorming process? I know you mentioned you had the luxury of some time to think of some other ideas. Was just this the most obvious glaring problem with a huge opportunity?
Yeah, the approach is similar to the one we follow initially with Cocinas Ocultas. So we start looking for a geography, specifically a country with huge potential, that start looking for a sector with huge tailwinds and potential upside. And then within this environment, we basically analyze different business model and pick the right one. So the idea of our philosophy is like a bad entrepreneur in a good sector is more successful than a very good entrepreneur in a bad environment.
No, you guys are good in both. But yeah, no, I got the analogy. So then getting into the specific problem, as you mentioned, only 2-3% adoption, I think if I recall correctly, in solar here in Mexico. Why do you think it's overlooked specifically in Mexico to this point?
Mainly because the sector is pretty new in Mexico. So if you look back in 2015, there were almost no installation, and now we saw like a huge growth. that brought us to 100,000 installation last year, 2024. For this same reason, there are no very sophisticated or tech-enabled companies in the sector. Most of the players that serve our segment, that is small, medium-sized projects, are family-owned businesses with a very narrow geographical scope. So on the client side, if you want to move to solar, despite the fact that the savings are huge, you need to wait 3 days, 4 days, up to weeks for a quotation. The level of service is very low. Then you need to find by your own like a financing solution. There are no financing solution and a lot of paperwork. So it's so painful, the whole experience on the client side. And most of the clients, even if they see like an opportunity, they just drop along the process. So that's why we saw like an opportunity there, right? So with us, you can receive a quotation in less than 3 minutes. You can get your credit approval almost instantaneously. So the whole experience is completely different.
And for you guys, I know the vision has evolved in many ways. Like at first, residential, going to people that maybe had liquidity or maybe didn't need financing. That's what most players are doing. Now, you guys mentioned this financing option. How does that still make it a challenge for people to see the value, right? So one might say, if I can't afford it, do I really care if my house from the residential side, I can afford the electrical bill. It's not a problem, right? So how do you guys see this evolution now into the B2B side where there's actually a lot more cost savings?
I think a point to add to what Edo mentioned earlier, which is attached to what you just asked, is there is very little amount of understanding of green need or like a greener world. So really the decision making today is driven by costs, and so potential savings, and we don't have an education push, or we didn't have an educational push from previous government around the benefit of doing or shifting towards solar, which has completely shifted with the new government. And attached to what you were saying, right, because it's mostly a cost thing for residential, the vast majority of the population is subsidized by government. So you're either very wealthy and then you pay electricity per kilowatt hour similar or even higher than the US, or your cost of electricity is very, very low. When we were going only residential, like the one that were affected by high cost of energy, were again top of the pyramid, which they've been paying bills all their life long. They obviously saw the pain, but it's not a starving pain, right? It's just, you're running out of money because you're paying electricity. And so what we saw in B2B was the actual need of people, right? So it's a cost that is hitting your P&L every month that you, your parents, grandparents, was own the little store around the corner have been hit forever, and they've seen this growing constantly over time. They don't think there is a solution out there. So when we come in with a solution that, solves a 40-year-old problem without having to have the money to do so, for them it's like mind-blowing, right? So it's really, we usually run into the problem that is too good to be true, right? So we have conversations sometimes that they don't get where is the tricky part. So it's that's where we start to hit the nail on the head and see adoption.
So if I understand correctly in my research with you guys is there's not a virtual power plant to date really or at scale in Mexico. You guys are looking to do this. If you could give like a basic understanding what a virtual power plant is and why this has a huge opportunity in the B2B market in Mexico.
Yeah, to have, you're right. And to have a proper virtual power plant, you need two main elements. First of all is a regulation that allow you to create a virtual power plants. And second is like having players, or one player at least, that manage like a portfolio of what is called decentralized energy resources that are typically solar system, batteries, chargers, smart thermostat, or whatever it takes. Because the real power of virtual power plants is being able to control the demand side. So what we are doing now at Niko is actually building this portfolio of decentralized utility resources. And to do so, in order to do so, we are financing our clients, and that's the idea. On the other side, the regulation, we seen, especially in the recent month, huge tailwinds. So the government is actively discussing on every week there are new news coming out about implementing, not specifically virtual power plants, but for example, for solar communities that in our view are a step towards like the implementation of the power plant. So we are confident that in 5 years from now, the regulation will be in place, and by then we'll have enough like a portfolio of managed assets.
So just so I understand now, you guys, there's like two parts of the business model, right? You have the financing side of the actual infrastructure, and then you have like this energy as a service type of like continuous, like a SaaS model. Is that correct? And can you explain how that works based off the customer profile?
No, it's not really a SaaS. Like what we offer today is still like our core. It's a financing product for solar system where we come in. It's a zero money down. We put the solar system on your roof. We do all the paperwork. You basically get interconnected into the grid. And what you start paying for your system, it's less than what you were paying before to the utility company, right? Then at the end of the contract, you own the system. We can keep giving you services if you want, and if not, like it's all on you. And that's what we do for both residential and B2B. If people want to pay, upfront, they can pay upfront. There is no issue. We don't force anyone into a specific type long-term contract, right? So what we are doing is basically building a network of thousands of these systems, right, that are being adopted as we speak. And eventually, the idea is that bringing the system online when regulation regulates, they can interact among them. So that's the phase two of the company. Yeah, we're not there yet, and obviously there's several things, density as well of energy systems that can do.
And you guys have mentioned like there's like now somewhat of a push and there's some tailwinds behind like the regulatory environment. How does this help you guys navigate your future? And it seems like now it's very clear that solar energy is essential to the future of Mexico in some capacity, where maybe 5-10 years ago it wasn't as obvious. How do you guys evaluate that? And are you actively trying to engage with regulation and trying to make sure that this is at the forefront?
Indeed. Look, we went through a fundraising process recently, and every single investor that actually looked at us and did some work and obviously asked around heard the same story, and that Mexico desperately needs energy, right? So it's not, the country today is not able to produce enough energy to fulfill the demand. So there is actually the whole nearshoring play where Chinese company want to move here, etc. It's basically not being fully exploited because of this, right? So there's area of the country where you want to open a factory, and simply the company tells you, "I'm sorry, I cannot bring you electricity. I don't have enough," right? So what's clear today is that the country needs electricity. The new president has a PhD in energy, so she gets what we're talking about. And everyone, even close to government that we talk to, knows that it's top of agenda for her. If you look at her published 100 points program for the next 5 years, 2 of them are around this, right? So you get an idea of like how much of an issue it is, and they know this is the solution, right? If you were to go and build a nuclear plant, it takes 7 to 10 years, billions of dollars that the country essentially cannot afford. So allowing small installation, small to mid-size installation to thrive and then to actually contribute to the grid is what they need, is what they're pushing for. And with respect to our contribution, yes, for sure. I think there is many ways or many things they can do to actually give an extra boost. One of them is community solar, a reality in the US and non-existent here simply because the law is not there yet. It's been stuck for approval for a while, and hopefully it's now getting into final stages. But that's one. But other than that, there is so many things that they could do, and not necessarily losing control, right? So I guess their concern is that we own electricity as a country. We don't want to lose that, at least not for now. But even without losing that, opening it up, it's slightly, it's definitely going to be a game changer. So we are definitely trying to be part of the table of the conversation and bring value to and ideas as well, right? So maybe it's something thought of, and we're just more knowledge. We look at the US, we look at the UK, we see stuff that works, bring to the table, and why not they end up applying.
That's a great point. We'll get to the concept of like this B2B enterprise. And from my research, it seems like there's this interest that you guys are gauging there. But how do you guys like balance like the affordability from the basic B2C consumer or these underserved communities that are in rural Mexico? Is that on the hit list? Are you trying to have some ability to serve those areas, or is not so much a priority?
You saying roll up?
Like rural areas, yeah, like underserved communities that really probably have challenges with the grid.
No, unfortunately, at the moment, there's not much we can do on the rural side of the population. What we can actually do now is financing very small family-owned businesses, like a very small corner shop in every basic, very low-level neighborhood of the country, because it's a asset-backed financing. So we actually use the same asset as a guarantee of the financing, and we support the credit with the savings, because we actually have savings. So we are already like targeting this kind of that till today or before Niko, no one even tried to serve. But the real revolution there to serve the lower level of the population or rural communities is the implementation of solar communities, because you basically separate the investment of in a solar system. You don't need a roof, but you can actually install a solar system somewhere else and then just sell electricity, clean energy, and cheaper energy to the rural community. So you don't actually need to finance those guys. Those guys don't need to pass like credit approval process. So there, when the regulation will pass, there will be like a dramatic change for sure.
Got it. Last couple things going into the enterprise interest. How has that evolution in the conversation happened? Are larger corporations now really intrigued by this opportunity to take some of their consumption to what you guys are doing now?
They are indeed. What's surprising still to today to me is that when we get to the table with this corporation, they never heard of this solution, right? So it's not that
Wow.
many times it's like us bringing education to the table and then knowing or getting to know that there is this option available, etc. And what we see them looking for is basically peace of mind. So it's like, okay, I kind of hear you, I'm not sure I trust you, but like what you're saying is too good to be true, prove me it's actually that way, and if so, sky's the limit. So what we're doing with a bunch of these is initial pilots where they get to see the system, they get to see their P&L improving, right? And then through that, we're confident we will be able to upsell or grow the customer base to the entire base they have. And it's again, it on the enterprise level is or used to be more of a green need, right? Because of all, especially the very large one, etc. So when you come with an actual cost and you get to talk to the guy that runs the P&L or whatever, it's like, wow, it's not just another green company trying to sell me the carbon benefit or whatever.
Carbon credits. It's not a nice to have. It's actually affecting their bottom line.
Correct.
Yes. How do you guys see? So you guys are in like different phases, is what you're saying with the evolution of Niko. How do you see AI coming into the future of what you guys are doing? And have you guys started exploring opportunities there?
Yeah, I think it's all, I mean, we see a huge potential about AI. We are an ops heavy business. So we have technical engineers on the ground. We do technical site visit. So it's very ops intensive business. And this is actually where we can actually benefit the most from AI. So we invested in AI since the very first day at Niko. The first attempt or the first investment was building what we call the Niko Energy. So the idea of moving from like a wait of 3 days to receive a quotation to an instant quotation. So we are bringing like e-commerce experience to the world of solar system, right? And we are just like investing or putting AI in every aspect of our operation. The idea is being able to operate with 50% of the headcount of a traditional company. That will allow us to lower our prices and increase even more the savings we are able to give to the clients. So making our no-brainer option even more no-brainer.
Nice. No, and I think that makes sense from the streamlining efficiency through operations. Okay, last 2 points, and both you guys can chime in on these, and they're not always the easiest, but what was the biggest misconception? Obviously, you guys had some experience in the energy space, but what was the biggest misconception you had before launching Niko? Could be about the market, could be about the opportunity, could be about the infrastructure.
I think number one was when like pushing our residential agenda at all costs. Like we thought that B2B was well served, which is definitely not or was not the case. And we thought there was an angle for residential, which I'm sure there is. But like by forcing ourselves to just focus on Resi, we were missing out on a huge opportunity that we later discovered.
Where do you guys see the biggest opportunity for you guys? Obviously, Mexico is huge, but do you see yourself continuing to grow into Latin America or just really being concise and consolidating this country for the next 5-10 years?
Well, the dream is, of course, building like a huge cross-country regional business model, the same way we did with the previous one. The initial pitch when we raised the pre-seed was actually we want to go like regional. After 1 year operating, we realized that Mexico is so big, there are so many opportunities that actually we see going abroad as a distraction, doesn't make any sense. So the idea for us, for I would say the next couple of years, will be consolidating our operation here, market here, and then we'll see.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. This was great. Appreciate everything.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for reaching out and setting this up. And great to meet you.
Yes. Nice to meet both of you. Talk soon.
Bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of Cut the Check, presented by VCMX. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed and leave a review. It really helps more founders and investors discover the show. You can find me on LinkedIn at MacMeyer or check out my website at macmeyer.com for more insights on startups, venture capital, and the Latin America ecosystem. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week.